Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how I make this out of this world apple pie from scratch. The pie crust recipe I'm using is from All Recipes. I will leave the link to it in the description below, and as we go along I will tell you any changes that I've made to the recipes. I have doubled the pie crust recipe because this pie has both a bottom and a top pie crust, and so the amounts of ingredients you need are 2.5 cups all-purpose flour, 1 cup butter chilled and diced, half a teaspoon of salt, and half cup of ice water. I have found the easiest way to cut in my butter with the flour and salt is using the food processor. Let's take a look and see how that is. Cut in the butter until the mixture resembles coarse crumbs. Looks good to me. Okay, so now it's time to add the water to the flour mixture. And the recipe says a tablespoon at a time. I just use a 1/4 cup and kind of estimate. And you want it to form a ball. When it'll form a ball and stick together, that's when you know you have enough water in the mix. I also like to wear these blue gloves so my hands don't get all sticky with the dough. I also started with much more than a 1/2 cup in the measuring cup. I don't know if it varies by climate or the type of flour I use, but I find that it usually takes more liquid than recipes call for when I'm making something like scones or a pie crust or biscuits. I'm almost at 1/2 cup here and it's not really sticking together yet, but we're getting there. I think that's gonna do it. Okay, now the recipe calls for this to be wrapped in plastic and chilled in the refrigerator from anywhere between 4 hours to overnight. However, that's another place where I deviate from the recipe. I typically only chill it as long as it takes for me to prepare the pie filling, and then by the time I slice my apples, I'll probably get it out and get it ready to go in the pan. For the pie filling, I'm using the recipe Grandma Opal's Apple Pie from All Recipes. I will include the link to this in the description below. And as we go along, I'll tell you about the changes that we've made to the recipe that we really feel sets this apple pie apart from everybody else's. The ingredients you'll need are your pie crust, 1/2 cup, the recipe says unsalted butter, I use salted butter, 3 tablespoons all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup white sugar, 1/2 cup packed brown sugar, a 1/4 cup of water, and 8 Granny Smith apples peeled, cored, and sliced thin. The things that you see on here that are not in the recipe but that we will use today are a salt shaker and cinnamon sugar. Be sure and save your veggie and fruit scraps for your chickens. It's time to roll out the pie crust. The first thing you'll need to do is to divide this into 2 pieces because you're going to make a top and a bottom crust. Eyeball it. If you have a bigger piece, I usually use that for the bottom. You need a little more dough to get all the way across that pie pan. Now it's time to lay your apples out in your pie pan. We like to make sure that we have evenly spaced apples, and we really do take time to do this by hand so that rather than just like dump them all in there, to make sure that we have nice layers. And then here's where one of our variation comes in that I'll show you after I do the first layer. I'm making this pie for a bridal shower that I'm going to tomorrow. We are having a recipe shower, and what we're doing is everybody is bringing their favorite recipe and for the bride written down, and then the staple ingredients that go with that recipe and a kitchen gadget to help them make it. So I am getting her a food processor and bringing her this apple pie recipe, and everybody's bringing some kind of snack, and so I'm going to bring the pie that goes with the recipe that I'm making. Okay, so now I have the first layer of apples down, and I'm just going to take the salt shaker and shake it, sprinkle it around a little bit. The reason I'm doing this is twofold. Salt is a flavor enhancer, but we learned, I don't know when, I don't even remember how we learned it, that salt is not only a flavor enhancer, it's also a flavor mover. It helps the flavor of whatever you're eating go to the right taste buds in your mouth. It's a flavor transporter, I guess would be a better way of saying it. That's flavor mover. So that's kind of an interesting quality that salt has, and that's why we do this after every layer of apples. And I'm going to put a few more in the center so I get a nice mound. We just sprinkle a little bit of salt in there. That's one of our secrets of this recipe that I'm now sharing with all of you. It's important that your top pie crust is the lattice crust with a high rimmed edge. We didn't put any filling in with the apples. We're actually going to pour a caramel sauce over the top and let it soak down through the lattice, through the crust, and fill the interior of the pie with yummy goodness, magical caramel. Melt your butter on the stovetop and add the flour to form a thick paste. Then you're going to add the brown sugar, white sugar, and water. Bring all ingredients to a boil, then reduce the temperature and simmer 5 minutes. Now I'm going to pour the caramel sauce onto the top of the pie crust, starting in the center and just working my way around. You can see why you need the high edges. Coming back to the center so that it totally gets soaked and filled. All of that goodness will just like soak down in there. Your apples are going to be covered in it. It's just an amazing pie recipe. Alright, and then one more thing now that's different that we do, that's not in the original recipe, is we add cinnamon sugar, and it just gives the top a nice crunch of sweetness, that little bit of cinnamon flavor. It really makes this pie just pop. The flavors pop. Pretty generous with this. Alright, I hope I didn't miss any. Looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to stick this in the oven on 425 for 15 minutes. The pie has been in the oven for 15 minutes at 425, and the directions say to reduce the heat to 350 and then cook it another 35 to 45 minutes. But one other trick or tip that I have that is not included in the recipe is to make a little tent around the edge of the pie crust, because your pie crust right now is golden brown and we don't want it to burn. And this is a way to have a nice, soft, flaky pie crust as opposed to a really crisp, overdone one. The foil will just protect it from burning while in the oven cooking the rest of the way. Oh, the top's looking so good though, isn't it? All right, this is gonna be fantastic. My family's a little bit upset that I only made one pie and I didn't make one for them this time. When you take the pie out of the oven, of course you'll remove the foil. And then another tip is to let it cool thoroughly. I prefer even overnight, because then all of that liquid, you can see that's still moving around in there, that will solidify a little bit, and it'll slice up really nice and hold together better the longer it cools.
Thanks for watching. Be sure and make this pie and eat it. And be sure and check us out on Instagram at Plan B Orchard and Farm, and on Twitter.
Be sure and save your veggie and fruit scraps for your chickens.
Yard bird.
Yard bird. Caw-caw.